Hi ho, sports fans. Steve Areno here. No, it's Gary. Gary Lucas. Welcome to my humble abode here in the West Village for part two of my tribute to the amazing and charismatic Pierre Ruiz. I'm still in shock at his sudden death. It's such a tragedy. This guy, Pierre's a Frenchman who principally lived in Rome and spoke English, French, and Italian very fluently, and had a label called Azor Disco. I hope it's still functioning. They had an album that I worked on with the singer De Niro that was scheduled to come out. I don't know what's going to happen, but I hope for the best for my friend Davide Combusti there. Anyway, Pierre's the guy who greenlit a project that I'd been really trying to get going for many a year, which was new studio recordings of all of the 12 songs I wrote with Jeff Buckley. Now, most people know my work with Jeff, of course, from the two songs that opened the Grace album, Mojo Pin and Grace. But then there were 12 that we did all together, that we played a couple of times, most memorably at St. Anne's Church on Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, 1992, after which Jeff more or less quit the group, but we did another show, and some of that stuff has survived. I'm gonna do a little show and tell. Here's a record that my friend, who's also tragically passed away from the virus, anyway, here he is. It's Hal Wilner's production, and the album is Songs to No One, 1991-1992. It's early work of Jeff Buckley and Gary Lucas, and that's been out since the year 2002 on Knitting Factory Records. Should check it out. But there were 5 songs that we co-wrote that were left off of that, so it was hardly definitive. And I am sitting on hours and hours and hours of tape. So I have a vast library of the good stuff. Anyway, I think Hal made an interesting selection. I use that word advisedly. It's a good album, but there was more. So anyway, I kept trying to get people interested in either releasing the entire St. Anne's concert, which has still never come out officially, though there's some Maltese manufactured bootleg out there, which I've never seen a dime in royalties on. I don't think the Jeff Buckley estate has either, although these songs, claim to, the label that put them out claimed to be paying royalties, but that's not true. And we've tried to have that taken down, but it's very hard to get any kind of legal action going in Malta. It's one reason why bootleggers set up there. Anyway, a few years ago I floated the idea to a guy who promoted my work, named Gigi Pastori, who I want to give the props to here, because Gigi is a good guy, and he knew my agent Luca Zanotti. He booked a show for me somewhere in the middle of Italy a couple of years ago. Gigi mentioned this project to his friend, De Niro, Davide Combusti, who is a very fine Italian vocalist with a very big voice and a big range. And he mentioned it to his label chief, Pierre Ruiz. And Pierre thought this was an intriguing idea, and the ball started rolling very quickly. And anyway, I found myself in December of last year of 2018, right before Christmas, in Rome for a week to work on this project with the producer Francesco Arpino, who's a great guy and my good buddy. And he's an excellent producer and sound engineer. So we did basic tracking at Pierre's house out in the outskirts of Rome, actually his apartment. And then we moved into the Mob Studios, which is a full 24-track facility And we flew in a great bass player from England with lots of credits, my friend Phil Spalding, and we used a couple of Italian guys as the rhythm section. So thus this full album was fashioned, and then they took an awfully long time mixing it. Another guy was brought in to mix it. You'd have to get the record to really to get the full credits here. I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce somebody's name, but here it is. It's the complete Jeff Buckley and Gary Lucas songbook on Ezra Disco, and it features the Nero on vocals, and I'm playing guitar throughout. And Francesco does a lot of multi-instrumental wizardry on it. So Pierre died suddenly in a mountain climbing accident in Sardinia. A beautiful country there. I've played at the Sardinia Jazz Festival, so I know it, and it's very mountainous. But anyway, I'll just get right down to it now after that preamble. This is part two. I'm going to do instrumental versions of many of the songs that appear on this record, beginning with one you may all know, Mojo Pin. Acoustically on the album, and they did some beautiful things with little tinkling sounds of percussion, and there's a cello on the track. It's quite beautiful. Pierre had some excellent arrangement ideas, and actually I was open to suggestion. You know, I mean, I know how these songs go, but I love to hear other people's interpretations where they bring something fresh to this material. And especially on a song like Mojo Pin and Grace, Jeff's vocals are so monumental, and they just stick in people's minds, that for singers to attempt to scale the heights that he established here on these songs is not easy. But De Niro has quite the range. He's a big barrel-chested guy and good pipes, so he could do it. and his vocal is very faithful to the original, but I mean, I've had all sorts of people. I have a big tent philosophy on these songs, which is if anybody wants to sing them, I welcome the chance. I'll give them a shot because it's theirs to embarrass themselves on. I know how it goes, but I've had really good results with amateur singers and professional singers in Australia. Recently, a couple years ago, actually, we did a tribute to Tim Buckley and Jeff, and Martha Wainwright, I think, was on that one and did a really great kind of witchy interpretation, as she so does. And I did a couple with some Belgian and Dutch singers in Eindhoven not too long ago. Actually, I had 2 gigs, one in Belgium and one in Eindhoven, and they were all really good. So anyway, I'm working now with a young singer. I don't want to reveal too much about it, but I'm giving her a crack on this. So, like I say, anybody, who wants to sing these, there's a karaoke version, at least of Grace, you'll find on my SoundCloud page, and I welcome you to practice on that. But there's a lot of ways they can be revisited. So, enough said now. Yeah, I want to also say it's really tragic that we've lost Pierre, and Lulu thinks so too. There she goes. She's barking in the background. He was a gentleman and extremely friendly and nice, and he had excellent suggestions, and he drew great performances out of me. Especially, I might be a little jaded playing this music by now, but I love to be reinvigorated, which he did. And also the other guys on the record, and he had some really good ideas with arrangements, like I said. All right, so here's one of my favorite songs called Story Without Words. All of these songs began as my solo guitar instrumental. The way I worked with Jeff is I wrote them sitting right here in this chair with a similar setup. And I wrote them without Jeff being present, except for the very first thing that we did, Bluebird Blues. I wrote these in absentia from Jeff, and then I put them on cassette and mailed them to him when he lived in LA. He was living with his mom in summer of '91, and then later he moved to New York. So he'd come over here, and we were working on songs together, so I'd play the instrumental for him, and then he would leave with a cassette of it. Often, but that was sometimes the first time he ever heard this stuff. Okay, so this is one of my favorite ones to play. I think we played it live with acoustic guitar, but we did a show, the Nero and Francesco and myself. Yeah, Lulu is very barky today. We did a show at Via Ada, the largest park in Rome, last summer, on a Sunday night, and we packed this villa, a lot of people, and I didn't get to bring my own guitars over, but I got to pick and choose some beautiful guitars out of various people's collections and a music store. And so this is Story Without Words as I played it last summer, and it sounded great on electric, so here it goes. Okay, now, Story Without Words. That title was actually derived from... The title, Story Without Words, was actually derived from a graphic novel by Franz Maserel, who did all of these way cool little books that tell stories using woodcuts. It looks like to me maybe lino cuts. Just beautiful graphic stories without any dialogue, but they're very deep. So check them out. There's some editions you can get. They're tiny, but these books are fascinating. Anyway, so Story Without Words is the name of one of them, and I've been influenced by a lot of literature for lyrics and titles and whatnot. I am an English major, actually, so that's just the English major in me. It's a bit of a hangover. So, Story Without Words, recently, on Sunday, there was a great broadcast for the 26th anniversary of the release of the Grace album, and my friend Jolene Grunberg sang that so lovely and beautifully, and that's going to be on a record I have coming out in late January, The Essential Gary Lucas, a double CD on Knitting Factory Records, which is 40 years of my work, taken from at least 30 different album sources. I've put out over 30 albums as a leader and as a collaborator during my career. And I've got a few in the pipeline, but we'll get to that. So now I'm going to switch to acoustic. And what I mentioned about new interpretations, when I arrived in Rome, after sending all of the music over for these guys to ponder from various tapes of mine, a lot of these songs were never, they just don't exist outside of the live sphere, unfortunately, but that's why I wanted to do studio versions. So at Fiumicino Airport, when I arrived in Rome, about 6 days before Christmas, Francesco Arpino and the Nero approached me coming out of customs, very warm, and made me feel right at home. So I said, I need to get something to eat, because the airline food is so wretched in general, and I was starving. So this has to be about 7 a.m. now. They took me to a coffee shop where I got a croissant or something like that, some coffee to revive myself. And they said, you have to hear this. We've just recorded a demo of this track, and what do you think? So it was a song called In the Cantina, which I wrote with Jeff. And they had totally transformed it and they reimagined it so beautifully. It was nearly perfect, although it did not have this frenetic flamenco-like strum guitar, which was kind of the meat of it. The recordings that exist, there were 2 live versions, I believe, feature just Jeff on vocals and me on this acoustic guitar, this 1941 Gibson J45. And I'm going to play that version because the other, you have to just get the album to hear what they did with it. And they put it out as a single, and I think it did get airplay in France initially, so it's a real good one. I'm going to post some tracks after the show the next day or so you can hear some of the work on this album, the complete Jeff Buckley and Gary Lucas songbook. But this is the original instrumental for In the Cantina. Cantina, which is a title I nicked from Van Dyke Parks, my friend, who I was introduced to playing with Van Dyke at Nick Cave's Meltdown Festival in 2000 at Royal Festival Hall. And I was a big fan of Van Dyke, still am, and I love his Song Cycle album. But before that, you know, he was a lyricist with Brian Wilson, who I adore. I share a birthday with. He's 10 years older than I am. June 20th is the day. Anyway, Heroes and Villains, which was the last great Beach Boys single, I would say, before Brian's retreat pretty much from the public eye for a while. There's a whole section that was cut out of the single that goes, "In the cantina, margaritas keep the spirits high." It's beautiful. And anyway, so in the cantina, and I introduced it at St. Anne's with apologies to Brian Wilson. I don't know how many people would get the reference, but now you have it. And check out, they have now released over the last few years the Smile Sessions, a whole box of it, and it's quite beautiful when you hear the entire Heroes and Villains fully assembled. So anyway, that was a breadcrumb, that was a reference point in our collaboration, and I don't know if I ever discussed it with Jeff, but oh well. I have a lot to talk about with him when I get up there. Hopefully not sooner than later, but anyway, maybe Pierre, if he's listening or tuning in, can communicate this to Jeff. I hope they get on, and Jeff should appreciate all the great work Pierre did. And so now I think it's almost time for me to go, and I ran out of time, so I'm going to do a third episode, a tribute to Pierre Ruiz, my friend who died so tragically suddenly on Sunday. And I'll do that this Saturday, so tune in, and I will play some more music of Gary Lucas and Jeff Buckley and talk about how we made that album. And meantime, go check it out. You know, I think it's one of the best things I ever did. Everybody who worked on it was delighted with their performances. There's not a bad track on it, if I do say so myself. Okay, enough said. And please, if you can, do visit my virtual tip jar at PayPal. The link is on the page. It would be ever so appreciated in this period, because I don't know when the hell they're going to reinstate gigs in a live sector. Maybe next year, maybe. But that's still unclear, and so we're in a very fraught situation. I know everybody's in the same boat, so I'm not trying to squeeze you too hard here, but if you can, spare something for me and Caroline, it would be appreciated. All right? So, until Saturday, I remain Gary Lucas. Love to play for you, and hope to see you soon. And all right, like that. It was an honor and a pleasure, and be safe.